Barron Trump is hiding a secret relationship, and when his father finds out, all hell breaks loose. Before we begin, if you love shocking secrets and high-stakes drama, hit subscribe now. You won't want to miss what happens next. The grand halls of Mar-a-Lago shimmered under the golden glow of chandeliers. It was a typical evening for Donald Trump, business calls, political discussions, and a sense of grandeur filling the air. But tonight, something unusual was about to unfold. Barron Trump, now a young man in his early 20s, had grown up under the watchful eye of his father. He was intelligent, charming, and, much to Donald's chagrin, independent. While his father envisioned him following in his footsteps, Barron had his own ideas about life, love, and power. Earlier that evening, Barron had left the estate, claiming he had a meeting with friends. Donald, occupied with a high-profile deal, barely acknowledged his son's departure. But a whisper from one of his trusted aides changed everything. "Sir, your son was seen leaving with a young woman, someone unexpected." Donald Trump narrowed his eyes. "Unexpected? What do you mean?" "Sir, she's the daughter of your biggest political rival." The room fell silent. The words hung in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. Without a moment's hesitation, Donald ordered his security team to track Barron's whereabouts. The stakes were too high. This was more than just a casual date. This was a potential scandal. Meanwhile, Barron and his date, Evelyn Sinclair, walked through a quiet, upscale restaurant in downtown Palm Beach. Evelyn, a striking brunette with a sharp wit, was unlike anyone Barron had ever met. She wasn't just another socialite, she was intelligent, passionate, and, most intriguingly, fearless. "Do you ever feel like you're trapped?" Evelyn asked, stirring her drink as she looked at Barron with curious eyes. He sighed. "Every day. My father has expectations. Plans. And none of them include what I actually want." Evelyn smirked. "And what do you want, Barron Trump?" Before he could answer, the doors of the restaurant swung open, and in walked the last person he expected to see, his father. Donald Trump's presence commanded the room instantly. The murmurs among the diners quieted as the former president strode toward his son's table, his expression unreadable. "Barron," Donald said, his voice calm but firm. "A word. Now." Barron exhaled sharply, glancing at Evelyn, who seemed unfazed by the sudden confrontation. Reluctantly, he stood up and followed his father to a private section of the restaurant. Donald wasted no time. "Do you have any idea what you're doing? Do you even know who she is?" Barron met his father's gaze with defiance. "Yes. And I don't care." Donald scoffed. "You don't care that she's the daughter of a man who's been trying to ruin me for years? You don't care that this will be all over the news by morning?" "She's not her father," Barron shot back. "Just like I'm not you." For the first time in a long while, Donald Trump was speechless. His son, the boy he had raised under his shadow, was standing up to him in a way he never expected. Evelyn soon joined them, her confidence unwavering. "Mr. Trump," she said smoothly. "I understand your concerns, but I assure you, I have no hidden agenda." Donald eyed her carefully. "Everyone has an agenda. Especially in this world." Barron crossed his arms. "Then maybe it's time you start trusting me to make my own choices." The tension in the air was palpable. Donald Trump had faced countless adversaries in his lifetime, political opponents, business rivals, even the media. But standing before him now was a challenge he never anticipated, his own son. And for the first time, he wasn't sure if he could win. The silence between father and son was thick with unspoken words. Donald Trump, a man who had dominated boardrooms and commanded global attention, now found himself locked in a battle he never saw coming, one with his own son. Barron stood his ground, his jaw clenched, his fists at his sides. Evelyn watched the two with quiet curiosity, seemingly unfazed by the powerful man before her. Donald, however, was calculating his next move. You think this is just about you, Barron? Donald's voice was low, controlled. This is about power. About loyalty. And you're walking straight into the hands of our enemies. Barron let out a sharp breath. She's not the enemy. You just don't like that I made this choice on my own. Donald turned to Evelyn, his eyes cold and unreadable. And you? What exactly do you want from my son? Evelyn met his gaze without flinching. I want nothing from him except his time. And maybe his trust. Donald smirked. Trust is expensive, sweetheart. And you can't afford it. Barron stepped between them. Enough. I'm not a child anymore, Dad. You don't control every aspect of my life. Donald studied him carefully. His son was no longer the quiet teenager who followed in his shadow. He was a man now, one who was willing to defy him. Finally, Donald exhaled and shook his head. You have no idea what you're getting into, kid. But if you want to play in the big leagues, you better be ready for the consequences. With that, he turned and walked out, his security team following. Barron let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. Evelyn placed a hand on his arm. Are you okay? He nodded. He's just, my father. He never backs down. Evelyn smiled faintly. Neither do you. Meanwhile, back at Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump sat in his private study, swirling a glass of whiskey. One of his aides stepped in cautiously. Sir, should we take action? Donald's lips curled into a smirk. Not yet. Let's see how far the boy is willing to go. Then we'll decide. The night air in Palm Beach was thick with tension. While Barron tried to calm his thoughts after his father's dramatic intervention, Donald Trump was already setting his next move in motion. He was a man who had built an empire through strategy, and this was no different. Back at Mar-a-Lago, Donald sat in his private study, making calls. His trusted aide, Richard, stood nearby, waiting for instructions. We need to know everything about her, Donald said, referring to Evelyn. Her family, her finances, her past, find out if she has any skeletons in her closet. If she's a liability, I want it handled. Richard nodded. Understood, sir. But, what if she checks out clean? Donald smirked. Nobody's clean, Richard. Meanwhile, Barron and Evelyn walked along the quiet beach, the waves crashing softly against the shore. I knew he'd be upset, Barron admitted, his hands in his pockets. But I didn't expect him to track me down like that. Evelyn laughed softly. Did you really think he wouldn't? He's Donald Trump. He doesn't lose. Barron looked at her, a bit surprised. And you're not afraid of him? She met his gaze with confidence. I've grown up around men like your father. They don't intimidate me. Barron studied her for a moment. There's more to you than meets the eye, isn't there? She smirked. Maybe. But you'll have to trust me to find out. As the night stretched on, the two grew closer. But just as Barron thought he had found someone who truly understood him, an urgent call from his father shattered the moment. Barron, get back to Mar-a-Lago. Now. Dad, No arguments. This is serious. Barron hung up, his heart pounding. Something's wrong. I have to go. Evelyn touched his arm. Be careful. Back at Mar-a-Lago, Donald was waiting. His expression was unreadable, but the tension in the room was unmistakable. What's going on? Barron asked. Donald slid a folder across the desk. Read it. Then tell me if you still trust her. Barron hesitated before opening the folder. What he saw made his stomach drop. Photos, documents, phone records, it was all there. And it pointed to one thing, Evelyn wasn't who she claimed to be. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. More thrilling stories are coming soon, stay tuned.